joined, and it's nice to see that you are here. And today we would be discussing some of the topics which good afternoon, Fijans. Some of the topics that we haven't yet discussed. And to begin with, we shall be discussing something very important, which you would be as a school head, as the principal of a school, or maybe as a senior teacher of a school or an educational institution, you would be expected to do, and that is preparing a budget, how to prepare a budget. Now, we are all aware of this term budget. This is something quite commonly used. So, what is exactly a budget? What do you mean? What is your idea of a budget? And I would also remind you, like I have been doing in my previous sessions, that don't feel inhibited in responding to the questions that I ask. You can never be wrong. So, I assure you that. And with that, you may share with me your idea of a budget. What exactly does a budget mean? What is it? What is a budget? Yes, tell me. So are you here or have you logged in and then left? Yes. Fidjans. Any document that contains articles with monetary values attached for a period of time. That's good. So Fidjans has covered two essential things. One is about the monetary aspect, and the second very important thing that he has pointed out is that for a specific period of time. So we are going to keep these two things in mind while we carry out the discussion about a budget, its importance, and how to make a budget. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to share his or her views about a budget? What does it mean? You don't have to define it in a bookish language. Your idea of a budget, what is it? First of all, I would like to know whether you actually are present or you have just logged in. Now I'm going to take a roll call today. Peter, Kauki Peter, are you here? No. Anas. What about you, Anas? I think you have joined this class today for the first time. Are you here? No. Ola? No. Suleiman? Where's Suleiman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
so Suleiman is here. Good. So tell me, what do you understand? What is your idea about a budget? What does it mean? What is a budget? Yes, go ahead. You must have
Okay,
heard of
budget
this.
is a monetary issue that deals
Monetary.
with what is expected to come and what is expected to go within a specified period of time.
Well, Suleiman has stated it in a very simple, but at the same time in a very comprehensive way. That's what I feel. And like Fijans, Suleiman also says that a budget is closely related to monetary aspects. And he has added to what Fijans has said, that something that comes in, something that goes out, something of course implies money in this case. First of all, tell me, can you see the screen? Is it visible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you have to prepare a budget if you are working as a school head or maybe as a senior teacher. And while we discuss a budget, how to prepare it, of course, the discussion would center around a budget, whether it's a budget for a school or for any other organization or for a country or for a state. But then the perspective would be the perspective of the discussion would be drawn from the needs of a school. And as I had told you on the first day, that we have no intention of turning you into financial managers. You would remain teachers who would be aware of the roles of a financial manager. Therefore, there are different types of budgets, and preparing a budget involves complexities. Nevertheless, we would keep the discussion at a simpler level. and discuss some of the key aspects of a budget. Now, what you have said about budget is absolutely right. I'll just present it in an elaborated manner. So, if I ask the question, what is a budget? You would say that, first of all, it is something very comprehensive and coordinated plan, which is expressed in financial terms. Now, you see that this definition or this idea of budget has three elements. What are these? Comprehensive, number one. Number two, coordinated. Number three, financial terms. And it covers the activities to be undertaken in view of the resources available for a specific period of time. Vidans has referred to this, that we do not prepare budget for an eternity. We do not prepare a budget until and unless we have a time frame in mind. That, well, the budget would serve my needs for 1 year, maybe for 6 months, maybe for 3 months, maybe for a week, or maybe if it pertains to household expenses, the household expenses for a month, or maybe for a trip that I plan. I plan to visit a particular place, what would be my budget? I plan to dine out, what's going to be my budget? I'm going to celebrate a festival, what's going to be my budget? Therefore, a budget is developed for a set of activities that are fixed and for a time period which is again fixed. Until and unless you have these two fixed elements, you would not be having a budget. Now, coming back to the first part of what's a budget, it's a comprehensive, coordinated plan expressed in financial terms. Not three, but what I can make out is that there are four elements. First of all, comprehensive. Second, coordinated. Third, I say that it is a plan. Focus on this word, plan. And it is expressed in financial terms. With Suleiman, Fidjans, both of you have covered. Now, coming to this, let us analyze this definition. Let us tease out the terms and try to understand each of these. I'll come back to you. Yes, what is the meaning of this word comprehensive? You tell me.
Easy to understand.
Okay, comprehension. That is something which is understandable. Okay, anyone else? What does this mean? A comprehensive plan. Of course, it's something that's easy to understand. Apart from that, what does it mean? Comprehensive.
Straightforward and direct.
Straightforward and direct, which is another way of saying that something which is easy to comprehend, understand. Anything else that comes to your mind? Just focus on one element, that is comprehensive. Well,
Something that is completely covering.
good, excellent. So apart from, you see that when we say that it should be comprehensible, which means that it should be easy to understand. And comprehensive also means that something which reflects in a holistic manner, in an within entirety, not leaving out anything. For example, if you are planning a trip to a place, you would include in it the transportation cost, the hotel tariff, the amount you spend on food, and things like that. Maybe you would go for shopping. If you leave out any of these elements, the budget would have a serious shortcoming, and that would pose a problem during the trip. It should be as comprehensive as possible. Well, it may not be possible for you to foresee all the needs, to predict all the needs, but at least the key aspects on which you are going to spend money and the key sources of funds. You cannot afford to miss out on these. Therefore, try whenever, as a school head, when you try to make a budget, when you make a budget, you should try to make it as comprehensive as possible. Now, this covers one of the elements, comprehensive. What does it mean, coordinated? What does it mean? I said comprehensive, coordinated. What is it? Coordinated? What sort of what does coordination mean? What is coordination?
Well organized.
Well organized, yes. Anything else? Just visualize a trip that you are going to, you are planning a trip to a place, right? So, and you need to prepare a budget. It should be comprehensive. Now, what would coordination mean? You are planning a trip with your family members. What would coordination mean? Any idea?
Putting things together.
Putting things together, right? And putting things together not in isolation of each other, but in a connected way. For instance, I plan to visit a particular place, and in my list, I have 5 tourist spots. But a member of my family is more ambitious, and she has planned to visit 10 tourist spots. I have planned that, well, I'm going to stay in a 3-star hotel. I can't afford beyond that. But someone in my family has no intention of staying in a 3-star hotel and would not settle for anything less than a 4-star hotel. And then I would prefer to avail public transport wherever it's possible. But there are members in my family who would prefer private transport. When I prepare a budget, I must have coordination amongst all the family members, what they aspire for, what they need. Now, if a family member says that, well, I need a pair of shoes, walking shoes, otherwise, it's not possible for me to visit that place, which would require a lot of walking. So, there are some needs, there are some aspirations, and I must, when I prepare the budget, when I put in all these elements, I must see my revenue, what is my income, what is the money that I have with me, and how I'm going to spend it, keeping in view the needs and aspirations. Otherwise, if I can't coordinate it well, I would not have a sound budget. For instance, the principal of a school needs to know what's required in the physics lab, what's required in the chemistry lab, what does her librarian require? What is the state of affairs of the sports equipments? What is needed? What should be prioritized? If you remember, during the last session and the session before that, we had discussed prioritization. What is the topmost priority? What is it that I can put off? So, without discussions, it would not be possible for you when you make a budget to coordinate and come out with a plan in which all the expenses and all the sources of income have been placed after going through this exercise of coordination. Therefore, budgeting is not only about financial aspects, but it has a lot to do about management. Now, I have said that it is a plan. Why do I say that it is a plan? You see, accounts are maintained in the institutions in which you work. You must have seen that accounts are maintained. The documents are following the maintenance of accounts. Are these plans? Why do I say that budget is a plan? Why do I say that? That a budget is a comprehensive, coordinated plan. What does this word mean? A plan.
Because it is today's design for tomorrow's action.
Yes, that sums it up, Suleiman. That If it is an annual budget, in that case, what am I going to do in 1 year? How am I going to spend the money? On what heads am I going to spend the money? What are my priorities? What are my goals? All these things would be reflected through my budget. And what are my sources of income and how am I going to use it? How am I going to use it? Therefore, future. It is a plan because it is a document which would be implemented in the future. Therefore, unlike the accounts that are maintained, a budget is a plan which is to be implemented. Now, coming to the fourth part, which says of which you have already covered, that it is a comprehensive coordinated plan expressed in financial terms. Now you see that what is the language of a budget? The language is the financial language. It speaks in terms of money. You have already said this. I'm just repeating what you have said. That it speaks the language of money. That this much money has been received from this head, that much money from that head, and I'm going to spend this much money on this for sanitation facilities, this much money for the library, and so on. So it is a plan which is written in the language of money. Therefore, we say that it is expressed in financial terms. Now coming to the activity, what does the plan depict? Well, the plan is about the activities that your institution would be undertaking. Activities, for instance, there would be activities in the laboratory. There would be activities in the library. There would be activities in the classroom. There would be activities in the playground. There would be activities pertaining to construction. So, all the activities that are to be undertaken, if there are activities in the classroom, naturally, a teacher, what does it imply? It implies that a teacher would be teaching. Hence, salary has to be paid. And all other perks need to be paid. If there are activities in the playground, the budget must reflect the equipments that need to be purchased, the equipments that need to be maintained, how the playground is going to be maintained, how students are going to be trained, whether you need a physical instructor, and things like that. But everything has to be in view of the resources that are available again for a specific period of time. When you prepare a budget for a trip that you are planning, of course, it goes without saying that you would be planning it in terms of the resources that are available with you during a specific period. You can't take into account the money that you would be earning next year while planning a trip this year until and unless you have the plan to borrow money and repay it next year. Usually, we don't do that. Therefore, this is again something very important, that activities need to be listed, and we need to keep in our mind the resources that we have. Of course, we have to cut our coat according to the cloth available, and that too for a specific period of time during this financial year. Therefore, budget is a plan, it is a framework for financial management of schools. Now, if you are asked a question like, do you agree with the statement that budget is the main framework for financial management? Justify. I'm sure you would be able to answer this question. We have discussed the points that would comprise the answer to this question. Now, coming to the budget period, you have already said that it is for a fixed period. It is not for an indefinite period, not for a period which pertains to the past. You can't prepare a plan since it is a plan, it is bound to be futuristic. You can't prepare a budget for 2022 or for 2021. You can prepare a budget only for 23-24, financial year 23-24. And again, preparing a budget for 25 or 26 would be something unrealistic, something unheard of. Usually, we don't do that. And apart from being comprehensive and coordinated, it is documented. What does this mean? Documented. When you have understood what is comprehensive, coordinated, why it is a plan, and it is written in financial language. Documented. What does this mean? What is documented?
Written down in a book,
Yes, written down.
recording.
Written down. Good. Suleiman says that it is written down. Well, yes, you have to write it. Write it means I don't mean that you should take it literally and write only using a pen or a pencil. No. It has to come out in the form of a text, in the form of a document. Why? Why is it necessary to document it? Why should you document it? Why is it necessary?
For
For
future
future
reference.
For future reference? Good.
For future referencing.
Yes, future. That's true.
Referencing.
Yes, that's true. That's for future reference. Any other reason? Any other reason? Why create a document? Why do you need to create a document? Any idea?
To guide the plan, not to go out of what has planned already.
Yes, this is important. This is very important. There are therefore what I can draw from your responses are two things. First, for future reference, so that we don't forget what we have planned today. If there are too many activities, the chances are quite high that we might forget a few, what we had estimated now. This is one reason, a good reason. The second thing is that tomorrow, if there is a new principal in the institution, or maybe a principal would like to change the plan, that's not going to be possible. Once you document something, you that gains a sort of permanence. It becomes fixed in nature. And until and unless it is absolutely necessary, until and unless you have good reasons to support your decision, it is going to be an unwavering plan. You will go ahead with the plan, come what may. Otherwise, you will have to state the reason for deviating from the plan. And this brings about a possibility of a greater possibility of pursuing the goals that you have set. You have goals that are fixed, I mean institutional goals that are fixed. The path in the form of plan is now fixed, so you can remain steadfast on your path. But having said this, I would say that it is not too rigid to disallow deviation in case of an exigency. But that is going to be an exception, not a norm. Usually, we do not deviate from a budget, and this is the reason why it needs permanence, and this is the reason why it has to be documented, and of course, for future reference. Well, so the estimate you need to what are the things that you need to state in this document? The estimated expenditure as well as the revenue of the organization. And as I've said, it is a futuristic in nature for a specific period. And the budget also reflects your fiscal targets. What does it mean, fiscal targets? Well, 10% of my revenue would be spent on payment of salary. Or maybe 70%. Usually in Indian schools, most of the money or most of the revenue goes towards the payment of salary. 70% of the revenue I have kept aside for the fiscal target comprising payment of salary. Rest of the money for different heads. What are these physical targets? It could be construction of classrooms, construction of toilets, sanitation facilities, purchasing equipments for sports, laboratory, purchasing books, providing welfare measures to schools, students, beautification of campus, and things like that. You have to set up fiscal targets. What does it mean? That you need to have certain targets. And how do you fix these targets? Well, the perspective for framing the targets is provided by the institution's goals. We had discussed in the previous session that if your institution is aspiring for providing quality IT education, information technology education, if this is an institutional goal, the corresponding physical target would be purchase of equipments, setting up a local area network, hiring a teacher who can teach children how to use a computer, maybe train your teachers, and similar other needs which you express in the form of fiscal targets. And remember that these fiscal targets would definitely need perspectives. You get the perspectives from the goals that you have set for an institution. If you want to organize a science fair in your school on an annual basis, a science exhibition or a fair, you will have corresponding fiscal targets. You will have science workshops, you will have science clubs, and you will have to set aside money for these activities. And you will also formulate expenditure policies and monitor the budget. I'll come back to you. What does this mean, expenditure policies?
It is a policy that deals with what is going to spend.
Yes, true. Apart from that, anyone else who would like to? Ola, today you are so silent. And Figjans, I'm missing the chat, your chat in the chat box. Okay. If you remember, during the last session, we had discussed 4 E's: economy, effectiveness, efficiency. So these things should help you in formulating the expenditure policies. I had said that it is necessary to prioritize. It is necessary to be economic. It is necessary to ensure equity so that you do not have any bias while preparing your budget. You cannot set aside more money for someone who is your favorite and ignore the needs of a teacher with whom you do not get along. Therefore, there should be certain well defined principles on the basis of which you formulate policies and engage in expenditure. So, this is important. And another important thing is monitoring the budget. What does this mean? You have to monitor. What does this mean? Yes? Well, monitoring, when you have a plan, for example, you are going on a trip along with your family members. Until and unless you are watchful, maybe some members of your family or some members of your group might engage in expenditure which would distort, disturb your budget, which is a plan. You are not planned for something, but if you allow that kind of expenditure, there would be deviation from the plan. On the other hand, you have set aside some amount of money, say for leisure activities. But after that, you practice economy, austerity to such an extent, you don't allow your family members to spend even a small amount of what you had kept aside. Then you would return with the money unspent. That's again not a good idea. Therefore, the four things: equity, economy, efficacy, effectiveness, all these things, and spending the money that you have in your plan and seeing to it that money doesn't remain unspent and not crossing the limits that your budget sets for you. These are some of the important things. Therefore, it is essential that you monitor how the budget is after all a plan, and how a plan is implemented. You need to monitor that. Now, what are the types of budget? Well, there are various types of budget. We are not getting into the details nor the complexities. That's because at the school level, usually we have a few types of budgets, and we would restrict, restrict ourselves to these. One is the school master budget. A master budget, like a master plan, depicts the overall financial and operating plan for a forthcoming fiscal period, which could be a year, if it's an annual budget, a 6 months budget, a quarterly plan, and so on. It has to be, but a school master budget must be comprehensive enough to cover all the activities undertaken by all the units of the school. Therefore, I say it is an overall financial and operating plan. It should take into consideration all the key operations of the school, like teaching and then supporting students, carrying out welfare measures, sports, co-curricular activities, and such other things. Therefore, this is about school master budget. Now, coming to the capital budget. This may be for a term which is longer than a year. For instance, you need to develop the capital assets, like you plan to extend your school building, or maybe you are functioning from a rented premise and you would like to have a school building of your own, or you plan to, if there is a school building but there are no laboratories. In that case, it is often not possible in case of major constructions to complete it within a year. In that case, you have to prepare a budget taking into consideration the time period within which the construction or the capital asset formation would take place. It could be 1 year, it could be 5 years. It is always better to see to it that you do not have a very long period, because it would then, in that case, you would have to factor in the price escalation, which is difficult to predict. If 1 kg cement costs X rupees today, maybe after 3 years, it would be X plus 10% of that amount. Therefore, even when you are going for a capital budget as a school head, see to it that the plan is for a reasonable duration of time. And then you have school departmental budgets, which are the various segments of the school master budgets. And these departmental budgets would inform the school master budgets. And these usually are concerned with the different units, departments. For example, your science teacher or physics teacher would prepare a budget, a chemistry teacher would prepare a budget, the music teacher would prepare a budget, and all these budgets, the departmental budgets, would inform the school master budget and would also inform the capital budget if you are planning to build laboratories. Now, you have already shared with me the need for budgeting. Well, it is a tool. A budget is a plan. It is a tool for managing by objectives. What does this mean? Managing by objectives. This is a term which is used in management. What does this mean? Management by objectives. Yes? Anyone? Well, management by objectives means when you have certain fixed goals, objectives. As I said, that when you are planning a trip, you have certain objectives that you will go for sightseeing, you will go to places that are naturally beautiful, you will visit certain monuments, and if you have friends and relatives there, the second objective could be to meet your friends and relatives. Maybe you plan to visit some cultural programs, so that would be your third objective. When you have certain objectives, it becomes easier to manage the trip. Similarly, when you have fixed objectives, it becomes easier for you to manage educational institutions. And when it comes to a budget, a budget helps to manage the educational institution because you already have objectives in place and you know how much you are going to spend for the attainment of various objectives. Therefore, managing the entire process becomes easy. That is because the processes, the activities, all your efforts would be guided by objectives. And when you have a budget in place, you not only carry out the activities in view of the objectives, but you also know how much to spend, what to spend for carrying out these activities. Therefore, we say that it is a tool for management by objectives. And budget expresses in a formal way. Informally, you may plan that well, which may not even be documented. That well, I'm going to spend this much money while celebrating a festival for buying a pair of shoes. I'm going to spend money on clothes. I'm going to spend money dining out. This could be done in an informal way, verbally, but a budget is never prepared in this way. It is a formal document which communicates the fiscal targets, which communicates the sources of funds, and which communicates how these funds are to be used, and it also communicates the priorities of the school. Therefore, a budget is a formal document. It is a formal way of, or it is a formal means of communication. And as I said, that a budget reflects the goals and time schedules. What does this mean? The goals and the time schedule. What does it mean?
The goals and the time schedules. The goals are what are set to be achieved. The time schedules are the time that are set to guide the achievement of. Example, we set a goal that we want to renovate a lab, and per the budget, this is the time allocated for us to achieve that for which is renovating the lab. So the time guides us work and we carry out renovation of them.
Well said. Well, I think from Fijan's response, we can make out that why budget is known as a tool for management by objectives. Even if I leave aside these two words by objectives, his response makes it amply clear that it is a tool which is used for effective, efficient management. You know what to do, you know when to do, and you know how to do just by looking at your budget. That I have a time frame of 1 year, or if it is a quarterly budget, I have a time frame of just 3 months, and I need to carry out all these activities within 3 months. Or if it is a capital budget, well, I have to complete the construction of this building within 2 years. Therefore, a budget would tell you not just what you need to do as a school head, what you need to manage, but also it sets the time frame for you. And this is the reason why a budget is an important tool for managing a school. It reflects the goals and time schedules, and it is also a means for assessment and taking corrective measures. How? You may elaborate this point. Why do I say that it is a tool for assessment? What would it assess? What would it assess?
And based on the budget that has been prepared, one can know the amount of money that has been used and the work that has been done. So you either know that, well, maybe we used more money than it was supposed to be used. And then maybe the work that was done was not equivalent to the money or the budget. So there's some form of money laundering or money that has been sent to a place where it shouldn't be. So it is a monitoring tool in that.
Well, true. So I'm going to say would be based on what Fidzans has just said. But let's wait for others to join. Yes. Why do we say that it helps to assess the performance of various units of a school? You say that a very simple example. There is a chemistry teacher who says that I need this much money because I need this amount of chemicals in my lab. And she says, while making the estimates, she has in her mind a time frame of 1 year. After 7 months, she says that all the chemicals in my chemistry lab have been used up. I need some more chemicals. Therefore, I need some more funds. What does it reflect? There are two possibilities in this case. One is that she had not estimated the actual need. She had estimated much less than the actual need. Therefore, her estimates were not sound. Poor estimates, number one. This could be a possibility. The second possibility is that there has been mismanagement. There could be pilferage. We have discussed this, that some amount of chemicals has disappeared, or maybe it has been wasted. When you leave it to the students and you do not supervise, do not monitor what they're doing, there could be wastage. So, either way, it reflects the inefficiency of the teacher. So, this also helps us to assess the performance. Similarly, once a budget has been made and you have a teacher who has not stated at the beginning of the financial year her needs, and all of a sudden says that, well, I had not thought of this activity, but this is an urgent activity and I need money for this. That again shows that she had not planned well. She had not planned well. She lacks foresight and she didn't know what she would be doing during the later part of the year. Again, this reflects on her inefficiency. Therefore, a budget also helps management, the process of management, because it reflects the performance, the efficiency, effectiveness of the units of a school. And then the outputs. For example, a music club is doing very well. Students are winning competition across the state. Why? That's because you feel that there is value for money. We have discussed it during the last session that I had spent this much amount of money and I'm getting rewards for it. The outputs are satisfactory. Or maybe and there could be another situation. The outputs are not satisfactory. I'm not getting the value for money, even though I have invested a considerable amount of money, but there are no results. I need to take some corrective measures. What sort of corrective measures? Well, I have purchased computers. I have hired a teacher and I'm paying her salary for it, but I have not signed an annual maintenance contract. And therefore, for the lack of maintenance, the IT management is not yielding satisfactory results. So, this helps me to take corrective measures. So, this is another benefit of preparing a budget. Now, what are the essentials? First of all, it should be a document which has a lot of clarity. The greater the clarity, someone had said, I don't remember, Suleiman or Firjans perhaps, that it should be clear and straightforward. Yes. It should make statements that are clear and straightforward. Complex statements that are difficult to understand. Stating things in a roundabout way, beating around the bush. No, these things are not going to work for your budget. You need to state things in a clear, direct, simple manner, and your goals must be realistic. Reaching out for the stars, reaching out for the moon, that may not be possible until and unless you have enough money for that. When I use the word realistic, I mean that your goals should be set in the context of the money that you have, in the context of the revenue that you have. And the process of budgeting heavily banks upon data generated by the accounting system. You know that your accountant or the accounting unit of your school, they would have day-to-day account of the sources of funds of the money that has actually been received as well as the money that has been spent. You need to look at the accounts thoroughly. You should check it, you should scrutinize it, and so that you have an idea well. Otherwise, how would you know how to go about the construction of a building? How much money you have for that? How much money has already been spent? What is left? And there should be a full participation of school head and teachers. We had discussed shared governance during the first session. And your when I say that there is a need for a coordinated plan, as a school head, if you try to prepare a budget on your own, it's not going to work. You need to listen to your teachers. You must give them an opportunity to speak, and better still, if they are preparing budgets for their own units. But while you delegate this responsibility, there cannot be laissez faire. You should not allow so much freedom that they do whatever they want to do without your even understanding what they're doing. Your presence is essential, but at the same time, delegation of responsibility is a must for coming up with a coordinated plan. And there must be effective communication. A school head who is not communicating on a regular basis with different units of the school, with the different departments of the school, would not be able to come up with a good budget. You need to, it's not only when you have regular communication, you can make out about their needs, their priorities, what are the things that they can do. And this would help you to set realistic goals. And then, as I've said, that it should be fixed in nature, it should have an element of permanence, but then at the same time, it must be flexible enough so that you can make some amount of deviation in or supposing there are some opportunities. You have some extra source of money, for instance, through mobilization of resources. You didn't know that you could mobilize so much resources when you were preparing the budget. But now that you have the money, you can't afford to leave it unused. You have to spend it. And this would bring about some changes in the budgeting system, in the budget that you have prepared. Another thing is that it is important as a school head for you to remember that it should be within the framework of policies and goals. I had cautioned that even if your intentions are noble, you should not deviate from the policies. You should not carry out things on your own without taking the authorities or the school management. You must keep them in the loop. And it is essential that what are the educational policies? What are the policies? What are the financial rules? What are the rules of your school? All these things are important. You cannot do even something which is necessary for the school if it is not in accordance with the policies that govern your school. For instance, your school might be having an admission policy. Now, if you feel that there are some children in the community who genuinely need admission to your school, nevertheless, if you have an admission policy which guides admission of children to your school, you need to work within the framework of the policies. If you admit more children and if you are going to spend more money on them, but there is no policy to support you, as a school head, you could be in trouble. Second thing is that when you state the goals, this is just a repetition of what I've already said, what you have already said. It should be simple, direct, straightforward, unambiguously stated. The estimates must be realistic, that is, in the context of the money that you have. And remember that a budget is, of course, has permanence, it is fixed, but that is for the time period within which it is supposed to be implemented. A budget which has been prepared in 2021 or 2022 will not be fixed to the extent that it remains unchanged even in 2023 and in 2024. It is not a document which is fixed forever. Socioeconomic needs keep on changing, technological factors keep on evolving, and your budget needs to keep pace with these changes. Therefore, you prepare a budget only for a certain period of time and not beyond that. And you must delegate authority. Your accounting system must be very sound. If you have a poor accounting system, if there are lacunae within the accounting system, if your accountants are not doing a good job, if they are not following the established principles and procedures of accounting, all these shortcomings would affect your budget. Your budget would reflect shortcomings of the accounting system. And as I said, it has to be a decentralized process. Decentralized process means the units of your school must have the freedom and the flexibility to prepare their own budget. As a school head, you should not be preparing a budget for the chemistry department, physics department, life science department, music, and all that. Yes, there are many principals, many school heads who tend to do that, but it's not a good practice. Now, coming to preparation of budget. There are 4 steps. First, we have already discussed that you need to prioritize your needs. That if it is a government school, a public school, you don't have the autonomy to prioritize needs. But if it is a private school, at least in India, the school head has the autonomy. She would have to decide whether she needs scientific facilities more than information technology facilities, whether she needs a concrete building more than a garden, whether she needs an auditorium more than IT facilities. Therefore, she has to prioritize the needs, of course, again, in consultation with the teachers. It is important to refer to previous budgets for guidelines. Only then you get an estimate of the amount that has been spent, how much money is needed for which activity. You get to identify the financial resources that can be tapped, especially those that do not pertain to the fixed sources of funds but can be mobilized. Well, previous last year we had mobilized money to the tune of this amount through these sources. So maybe this year I could try these sources again. You need to have estimates of costs which are again realistic. If the market price is say X amount, and if you have made an estimate of 20% less than or 10% less than the market price, your budget would be an unrealistic budget. And then you need to present the budget, and finally you need to adopt the budget, that is implement it. Now coming to something important, how to prepare a budget. We are going to discuss just three: line item, program budgeting, and zero based budgeting. But before that, let me check how many of you are here, how many of you are here with me, and if you have any doubt, if you have any queries, yes, tell me.
I'm around.
No any query.
Peter, go ahead.
No any query. So far it is good.
Okay. Now, tell me, how many of you prepare budget for your schools? I'm sure you must be doing it at home. But how many, I mean, not just schools, but your educational institution, how many of you are involved in preparing a budget for your institution?
I have done that before, but not always.
Okay. So you are not doing it on a regular basis. And anyone else? Prajans, yes? Go ahead.
Um, like I said, I have done it before, but not on regular basis. Um, how I did it was that I had to first go to the markets to get the prices that are supposed to be used for the preparation of the budget. For example, you need you need three pro forma invoices to compare prices
Right?
as part of the preparation of the budget. So you first go to the market, you list the items or you itemize the things that you need for the semester. Then you go to the market and then get the pro forma invoices. Then now when you come, then you prioritize them. For example, maybe in the transport section, you need to buy new vehicle tires. You need to go in for respraying of the vehicles, but you have to prioritize. You know that the vehicle tires are on regular basis, so those ones comes first. Then the respraying and the maintenance of the vehicle comes second. But with all this, you have to get the prices from the market so that you can compare with the previous prices that were on the market to know whether they are increase in prices or they are decrease in price. And then when you have done that, then you write a memo, a memorandum to attach to it, and then you present it to the principal for this. It's after this discussion that when she approves that, then now you put it into formal writing and then
Well, so what I gather from what he has said things that are very important, that listing items. And when you prepare a list of items, we had said at the very outset that it should be comprehensive. We must be as careful as possible that we do not miss out things that are important. Itemization, that's what he said. And then he said that he goes to the going to the market, getting the invoice in order to get the estimate, price estimate. So this is what the steps that he has been taking, Fitjans has been taking from that. He has been taking two really very sound steps. Number one, trying to make the budget comprehensive. And the second thing is that his budget is going to be a realistic budget. Why? That is because he's carrying out the exercise of finding out the actual price. Okay. So these are two really good points. Anyone else? How do you prepare a budget? Any experience, any idea? How should we prepare a budget? Suleiman, you have just joined. I would like to hear from you. Or tell me about the budget that you prepare for your personal trips, maybe.
Ma, I am from Nigeria, and we are casting our vote today. We are conducting our election today, gubernatorial election.
Okay.
This is why my attention is diverting.
Okay, okay, I got it. So you must be busy.
Yeah, I even want to go out and cast my vote now.
Oh, you must, as
So,
a good
except,
citizen, you must do that. As a good citizen, you must
yeah,
do that. But be sure to watch and listen to this recording. Okay, okay.
of course, of
Before you
course.
leave,
So,
goodbye. Because goodbye and best
accept my
wishes. Because
apology.
no, it's okay. Best wishes because it's going to be my last class. I wish you all the best. Okay, Suleiman. So,
Thank you, ma.
uh, so I'll come back to what. Anyway, Ola, are you there? No. Okay. So now,
Yes, yes.
so how come you're so silent today? What happened?
I'm also in Nigeria.
Oh, so you're also busy with the election.
Yes,
Okay. And what about you? Have you cast your vote or yet to do it?
yet to do it.
Okay. So you're extremely busy. I understand. But
Yes, I'm
okay.
waiting for the lesson to end.
Okay. Never mind. Never mind. So I'll come back to what Vijans has said. And well, you see that there are many methods of budgeting, but we are going to focus on three of these. First is line item budgeting, and that's what Vijans has already described. Second, program budgeting, and the third, zero based budgeting. Coming to line item budgeting, this is exactly what Vijans has said, that the amount is allocated in gross terms. Well, he goes to the market and finds out what's going to cost, which item is going to cost how much, and why we need that particular object, why we need to buy that object, why we need to engage in that activity. That is not a part of that budget. Individual financial statement item wise, and these are grouped into categories. For example, I need to spend on books x amount of money. I don't say that well, and within the category of books I could mention books for teaching English literature, books for teaching mathematics, reference books for teachers, things like that. So book is the category, and within that I list the type of books. And after I have listed books, you see I'm continuously repeatedly using the word listing. This is what line item budgeting is about, and this is what Virjansa said. After that, I list midday meal or the meal provided to the students. I'm going to spend this much money. So, if meal is the category, and if I'm providing two meals during the school hour, I could list these two meals within that category. After that comes lab equipments. Similarly, there could be many other expenses. This is an example of a line item budget and office supplies for the month of January. You see that in what is important in line item budget is what was the money spent in the previous year. This is for 2019. And what is the projected estimate for 2020? And this is what I had projected, but the actual amount exceeded it. It is important to take into consideration your previous year's budget. And this is a fundamental principle of preparing a line item budget. Number one, you list the items, the amount that was spent in the previous financial year. You may make some incremental increase. Well, due to price escalation, due to inflation, I would add 10% or 5%. And therefore, the projected expenses a little more. And this is what you do. And then after that, you find the total. The gross amount is stated. This is what is a line item budget. This is known as this is a traditional way of preparing a budget, even for our household expenses. We prepare a budget in this manner. When we are going for a trip, when we plan to celebrate a festival, or when we are planning to have guests, if we develop a budget, we prepare a budget in this way. First of all, we make a comprehensive list, taking care not to miss out important things. And then you think of what was the expenditure during my previous trip, if it was a recent one. How much did I spend on hotels? How much did I spend on public transport? How much did I spend on clothes? And after that, you make some enhancement in it. And this is a traditional way of preparing a budget. You don't ask yourself that why am I, last year I had spent on buying a pair of shoes. This year also I include a pair of shoes. You do not ask, do I really need a pair of shoes this year? Last year I had spent my days in a budget hotel, in a 3-star hotel. But this year I have more money. I can afford a 4-star hotel. So why do I need to spend my time in a 3-star hotel? You don't ask questions like that. Just take into account the items and you factor in the price of the previous year's budget and do it in a traditional way. This is line item budgeting, lining up, itemization. A simple way of preparing a budget, but at the same time, a common way of preparing a budget, uncomplicated and very easy to make. Even school heads who do not have much experience in financial management would find this method of preparing a budget quite easy. Now, coming to program budgeting, this is somewhat more complex than line item budgeting. That's because it's a fiscal plan. It is a budget, therefore, it is a fiscal plan which is expressed in the terms of the programs. What are the programs of your school? And you allocate resources not by lining up items, but you line up programs. You are lining up, but not items. The items are, for the items, the fiscal amount is expressed in terms of the program. Let's see this example. We'll come to an example a little later. What you do is that you put together all the activities, all the efforts into programs. For example, transportation, food, physical education. Within physical education, see, if it would have been a line item budgeting, you would have said sports equipment, this much money. Salary of the sports teacher, this much money. Playground maintenance, this much money. Playground equipments, this much money. You are not doing this here. What you are doing is that for my physical education program of my school, I need this much money. And it is important that to state the major goals of the program, that why your school needs a physical education program. You have to state the goals that I want my children, my students to be physically healthy. Only a healthy person can avail the benefits of education. A healthy body harbors a healthy mind. Physical education is therefore important. Similarly, IT education is important in the 21st century. Even with all academic education, my children would not be excelling until and unless they have IT skills. Therefore, my IT program is necessary. And you mention specifically the objectives that would help you to ensure the accomplishment of larger goals. That I would be spending money on buying computers, I would be spending money on annual maintenance, I would be spending money on hiring a teacher and paying her salary every month. That is because I want to accomplish the larger goal of equipping my students with the necessary IT skills for facing the challenges of the 21st century. You may have a program for reading. You know nowadays that students have a disinclination for reading. You may have a reading club, you may have a reading program. That apart from textbooks, it's well known that students do not read. So, how would you cultivate the habit of reading? You can have a reading club. You can invite students who are not the members of reading club to listen to the students reading aloud. But in order to run a club, what do you need? You need books. Otherwise, what would the students read? In order to incentivize membership of that club, in order to incentivize other children to come and join those who read aloud, maybe you could have some provision for refreshment, for some food, which would draw students. You need money for that. In order to develop the habit of reading, in order to cultivate the hobby of reading, you have a reading program. And it is better, it is not always possible, but it is always better to mention the alternatives for achieving the goals of a program. If it is possible, it is not always feasible. If you have two paths, that, well, I need sanitation facilities and I'm going to hire this group for constructing the sanitation facilities. In case that doesn't work out, then with the help of the resources I mobilize from the community and some appeal for donation, I would try to mobilize resources, because without sanitation facilities at the secondary and senior secondary level, there is a dropout. Students do not come to school. This is actually a fact which I'm stating from India. There are studies reporting that schools in which there are not adequate sanitation facilities, there are dropouts. And schools often do not have the fund for proper sanitation facilities. And you need to compare the costs and effectiveness for alternatives. Well, if there is a tendering process, who are the bidders? What are they going to charge? Do I have an alternative? Or if it is a government school and the government asks me that this is going to be the person whom you need to engage for construction, I do not have an alternative. And you need to establish evaluation criteria to measure the success of each program. That, well, I have IT facilities in place, I have an infrastructure, I have hired a teacher, but still my students, or maybe not the students, my teachers are still not skilled enough to use IT facilities. This is no longer true for students, because students learn very fast how to use IT, but there are many schools where teachers have not yet mastered the skills, in spite of the school having all the facilities. So, what's lagging? What are the corrective actions that I need to take? Therefore, you see that unlike in a line item budgeting, when you have a program budget, you take into consideration the goals of the program as well as the success of the program. Therefore, a program budget is much more evolved than a line item budget. A line item budget hardly has anything to do with the success of the program. Well, I had spent this much money on a pair of shoes last year, therefore, I'm going to factor it in this year as well. But that's not the case for a program budget. Goals are important. It's necessary for you to state the goals, and the success of the program, that's also equally important. Therefore, what you gain from this kind of budgeting is that it brings about accountability. That if a program has not been successful, what has gone wrong? Who has performed? Who has not performed? Who has not performed so well? So, therefore, this is a kind of budgeting which would help you in fixing accountability. It does not factor in only the heads on which you need to spend money or how much money you have, but success of the programs is equally important. And this is the reason why I say that this is a more evolved form of budgeting. But at the same time, as a school head, you, while preparing this kind of budget, you would realize that this is a more complicated form of budgeting. The simplicity of line item budgeting is lost. It is a complex procedure. So this is an example which I've taken from IGNO, that we have a B.Ed program for secondary level teacher training. So for B.Ed program, what is going to be the expense? And this is what we do at IGNO. I'm coordinating a program which is a postgraduate diploma in educational technology. So what are the heads? I need this much money for course development. And after the course has been developed, after the courses have been developed, the self-learning material has been prepared, I need to get it printed. So how much amount of money do I need for buying papers for printing? After floating the tender, who would be the bidders? Who would tell me how much they're going to charge for papers, supplying papers? What would be the amount that would be charged by the printing press? I had said, if you remember, that the expenditures should be within the framework of the policy. Well, my university has a panel of printers. I cannot go to any printing press, even if they promise me, even if they assure that, well, madam, we are going to do the printing work, we are going to carry out the printing work really fast. You will get everything printed within no time. And the quality of the paper is going to be very good. Still, if they are not in my panel, if my in my university's panel, and I am sure that they are going to do a good job, they are going to do the job faster than those who have been empaneled. Still, I cannot include them. And this is why I have said that your budget should be within the policy framework of your institution. You know that your this course of PGDSLM has perhaps 12 units. So when I go for course development, those who write units need to be paid. Those who edit the units need to be paid. Those who carry out proofreading need to be paid. So what is going to be the expenses? Within a program budget, you have line item budgeting. But the items are lined up program wise. Similarly, we have Masters of Education program, PGDSLM program, and for every program, we as coordinators, we prepare budget. It's not necessary that since I had developed the courses last year, I should be developing the courses again. No, I would develop the courses only when my program is being revised. Otherwise, why should I develop courses every year? If I'm not developing courses, naturally, I'll not go for printing, especially if my program is going online. Therefore, unlike in a line item budgeting, here I would think of the objectives of my program and the objectives of the activities comprising the activities of the program, and I would calculate the expenses accordingly. So this is a program based method. Before we discuss zero based budgeting, it has been a long time since I have talked to you. Tell me, now, what is your understanding about the difference of a line item and program budgeting? Which sort of budgeting would you prefer as as an institutional head?
I would prefer the
Yes?
program budget.
Okay, program budgeting. But everything said and done, it's going to take a lot of your time and it is a complex process. Nevertheless, it is evolved. Okay. Now coming to the third type of budgeting. So there is one line item. More evolved than that is the program budgeting. Now coming to one more budgeting type, which is even more evolved. Zero based budgeting. This is relatively a new concept. And what I had said, if you remember, I had said during the line item budgeting that one thing I would like to state here, it is not zero based, but it is zero based budgeting. Okay, so as I have said that, one second. Yes, here it's okay. That in a line item budget, what I do is that I see how much money, what were the items on which I have spent money last year, in the I mean in the previous financial year, and I list those very items, and after that I make some provision for enhancing incremental in an incremental way, say 5% or 10%. I increase the estimate. But a zero based budgeting, what it does is that it helps me to prevent the incremental growth or budget creep of traditional budget. I said that line item budget is a traditional way of making a budget. This is what we commonly do, even for our household expenses. And we say that, well, last year I had spent, say, X amount of money on my celebrating a festival, and this year, because of the inflation, I'm going to spend 20% plus 20% or 10% more than what I had spent. This is called budget creep. This is called incremental growth. While preparing a line item budget, that I had purchased school playground equipments for X amount of money last year, but this year when I purchase the same things, it is going to be X plus 2%, X plus 5%. This is known as incremental growth or budget creep. But in a zero based budget, you do not list items just because you had listed them last year during the previous financial year. And even if you list the items that you had listed in the previous financial year, you do not go for incremental growth. A zero base, zero, as you know, it starts with the premise that when I am preparing a budget for this financial year, my base is zero. What did I spend last year for sports equipments? Zero. How much did I spend for my music club? Zero. How much did I spend for paying salary to my teachers? Zero. I do not take into account the money that I have spent on programs, on items in the previous financial year. Why? That is because the first and foremost thing that I need to do is that justify the expense. Just as in a program budget, I have to, first of all, I need to justify. The need for justification is very strong in a ZBB. It is stronger than even in a program budget. I have B.Ed program in IGNO. I'm going to continue it. Therefore, just like in line item budgeting, the programs are often there in this financial year. Why? Because it was there in the previous financial year. I do not ask the question, what is the enrollment of B.Ed? What is the enrollment of PGDSLM program? If the enrollment has fallen to 2, should I still continue the program? I don't ask that question. I don't ask the question pertaining to value for money. I do ask the question pertaining to the relevance of the program. Health education program is important. Therefore, I'm going to offer it. Whether or not there are takers, this question is asked during a ZBB. That fine, health education program is needed, but are there takers? What is the enrollment? Does it make sense to offer a program to just 2 students, incurring all the fixed costs? So this is an important question which is raised while you prepare a ZBB. Each program or activity has to be justified every financial year. And you do not look at what you had been spending last year. but you justify an activity in terms of the need to continue the activity. Is there a need to continue this project if a program is being offered on a project mode, or has the project lost its relevance? Am I teaching a computer program in a project mode even though the program is now obsolete? Why? I have been teaching it since the last 5 years, therefore my program based budgeting includes that. But there are no takers. The program is now obsolete. Why am I teaching it? Cost benefit analysis is important. And what is cost benefit analysis? We have already discussed it during the previous session. And this naturally would lead to more prudent expenditures, better utilization of the money that you have. The chances of wastage of money, chances of money being locked up in activities that no longer fetch revenues for you would be lesser. When I offer a particular program and I enroll students, I know that their fee would be a source of earning revenues. But if there are only 2 students, still I need to set question papers. Still I need to carry out examination and I need to rent an examination hall. I need to print their study material. My cost remains the same, but what's my revenue? My revenue is falling every year. Why should I continue with this program? What did I spend last year? Doesn't matter what I've spent last year. It is a zero. What am I going to spend this year? How is it going to benefit my organization? Therefore, ZBB implies that you're going to ask yourself some very tough questions, hard questions. What are the disadvantages? Well, your teachers may not be too happy when you shut down their program saying that, well, your program is not having enrollment, I'm going to shut it down. They would not be too happy. I'm going to shut down the music club. That's because there's no membership. Your music teacher perhaps would not be happy with you. Nevertheless, you take this decision. Apart from the complexities, this is another disadvantage of ZBB. First of all, justifying educational programs is difficult. That's because, unlike goods that are produced in factories, in industries, which are sold, in educational programs, whether or not you have actually been benefited, that is sometimes very hard to define. Educational benefits are often not tangible. Maybe there are many participants in the music club, and but your school doesn't earn any money out of it. But in the science club, when students are making models and selling it in the market, when the students are making apps and selling it in the market, your school earns a lot of money. And if this is the ground for closing a music club, how ethical would it be? Would it be a sound decision? Therefore, when you go for a ZBB, be very careful. You have to be careful that at least in the field of education, it is always not possible to justify the benefits. And sometimes it takes a long time in articulating the benefits. For instance, teaching music. Well, what is the impact of teaching music? What is the impact of music in the lives of students? Maybe it would take a very long time to make out. Nevertheless, the rationale is the guiding factor in a ZBB. That sports, healthy hobby, and then my students have been earning trophies, medals in various competitions, I need to continue this program. Computers goes without saying, I need to develop IT skills. Sanitation facilities, it's a basic amenity, otherwise dropout rate would be so high that my school would have very few students left. Nutritious meal is definitely required. But apart from these, you, you would also have to state the benefits in monetary terms. That when I provide a nutritious meal, my attendance remains high. That is because children are not falling ill, children are not turning anemic. They come to school and my attendance is high, and when they come to school, my educational goals are being fulfilled. And we could just sum up how to prepare a budget, that you will need to prioritize your needs, whether you prepare a ZBB or a line item or a program based budgeting. Comprehensiveness is essential, therefore, line up everything first. You can take different elements from different types of budgeting, prioritize your needs, and identify the financial resources, that what is the money that you have, and estimate the costs in a realistic way. And in a ZBB, you do not go for incremental rise. Nevertheless, even in a ZBB, I would say that do not discard the previous year's budget. Take a good look at it, try to understand it. You may not borrow the figures. Nevertheless, understanding the expenses, the pattern of expenses, at least in a program budget, that's very important. And then you have to present the budget maybe to the governing body of your school, take their approval, and all these things you need to complete when you have a timeline. And before the financial period for which the budget is meant begins, you need to complete all these activities. And then, as I have already said, then you need to monitor the school budget. Monitoring should be regular, rather continuous throughout the budget period, so that the expenditures are made in compliance with the budget. And another important thing is that the sources of funds do not remain unutilized. So, this is also very important. And exercising budgetary control as a school head, while you implement the budget, there is a need for continuous comparison of actual performance with that budgeted. As I have said, citing the example of a family trip, that things could go haywire if your family members and you do not stick to the budget. Therefore, budget is not merely a document, that a plan that's prepared and kept in safe custody. It has to be implemented meticulously. You need to check the actual performance in each area and on a continuous basis compare and contrast with what has been budgeted. And in case of you should be careful enough that in case of deviation, your attention is drawn to it, and you need to provide detailed report of the deviations. First of all, you need to report the implementation of the budget. If there are deviations, you need to report that as well, and you need to take corrective action. If you find that money is being wasted or chemicals are being wasted in the chemistry lab, then you need to take corrective action in order to address the issue, so that the expenditure remains in accordance with the budget. And how do you monitor? That there could be unexpected incomes or shortfall. That is accepted. But otherwise, you need at a glance to make out whether your books have been balanced, I mean, accounting books, and you need to investigate the variations. in the allocated budgets, in the commitments, in what has been invoiced from what you have spent. This should match. If the invoice says something and you spend money which is different from the invoice, that's not a good practice. What you have actually spent, how much is left unused, and then you make some projections towards the end of the year. Now, what to do if you detect overspending? There is no reason to panic. First of all, stay calm and judge the seriousness of the variation. How serious is it? And detect the cause, that what is leading to the variation. Who has been extravagant? Rather than who has been extravagant, what are the activities or what are the practices that have led to the extravagance? What's going to be the implication? How serious would be the implication in terms of in fiscal terms? Take a relook at the income. That how serious is the shortfall going to be? And whether subsequent expenditure can be reduced in order to compensate the overspending. Is it possible? Going back to the example of the chemistry lab, now practicing some amount of austerity, or even in a family trip, sometimes when we detect overspending, we may practice austerity. So, is it now possible to practice some sort of austerity so that the earlier expenditure, which were more than what it should have been, can be compensated? These are some of the ways. But at the same time, be sure to document the variation. I had said during the previous session that do not brush it under the carpet. Do not try to conceal it. Report it, document it, report it, take corrective actions. Therefore, we could summarize by saying that a school budget would help you to keep track of your income, expenses. Many schools play a limited role, especially in public schools of India. The school heads tell us that, ma'am, we don't prepare budget. We have hardly any role in preparing budget. Budgets are made by higher ups. We do not have a role in implementing the budgets. But at the same time, with the growth and expansion of private sector's engagement in school education, we have many private schools. And you may have a similar situation. And as an institutional head of a private school, you would definitely have a role in preparing a budget, in administering a budget, in monitoring a budget. And you would require the skills for making a budget. And even today, if you are in a public sector organization, tomorrow it could be privatized, or maybe you would shift to a private organization. So it's not just a simple financial plan, but it is more evolved than that. It is evolved enough to reflect your school's philosophy, what it aspires for. Does it aspire for IT skills? Does it aspire for scientific abilities? Does it aspire for reading habits? Does it aspire for musical abilities? Does it aspire for sports, good teaching, a good building? Therefore, a budget reflects what you have planned for your schools. Now, with this, we have come to an end of budgets and types of budgets, how to prepare a budget, how to administer a budget, how to monitor a budget, what you should do in case of a deviation which you have noticed. Now, I'd like to hear from you. If you would like to share something, we have barely 13 minutes left. So, is there anything that you would like to say? I leave it to you.
Mine is a question.
Yes,
Um,
I'm coming to you.
with the budget,
Huh? Yes. Not
with
just
the
related to
budgets
budget,
that
but anything related even to this program, I mean, this course. If you have any, because you see, I'll be spending another, say, 10 minutes with you, and after that, I'll say goodbye and wish you all the best and leave. So if you want some clarification pertaining to this program, you are free to ask.
okay. Mine is a question. With reference to the postgraduate diploma in school leadership.
Hmm. Could you be a little louder,
uh,
Vijans?
with reference to the postgraduate diploma,
Vijans, you're not
would
audible.
it be
You are not audible. Could you please repeat what you had been asking? I couldn't hear, I couldn't make out what you have been saying. Vijans? Yes? Vijans, are you still there?
yes, please, I am here.
Huh. My
I
request
was
is that
asking
please be
whether
a little louder.
the budget preparation is the same in all schools or it's different pertaining to other schools.
Yes, true. You are saying that the situation is pretty similar in the schools of your country. Is this what you intend to say?
I was asking whether they are the same or they are different in schools pertaining to budget preparation.
Whether the schools are different in terms of what? The question is not.
Of preparing the budgets, or is
Well,
the same rules that every school abides?
well, Fidjans, it depends on the school management. Say, if it is a government school in India, a public school, as I said, the school heads do not have to prepare, they do not have the autonomy. I would rather use this word to prepare a budget. So just forget about the rules for principles underlying budget preparation. But when it comes to private schools, it depends on the school management. If they want a ZBB, a school principal would be preparing a ZBB. But at the same time, even if the management is unaware of a ZBB or a program based budgeting and is insisting on or would be satisfied with the line item budgeting, as a school head, you could come up with a program budgeting or ZBB budgeting approach. But you cannot really differentiate schools on the basis of the type of budgets they have. It really depends on the skills of the school principal, demands of the school management. But even now, I would say that your question was not very clear to me. You may try to make the question a little more clear.
Ma'am, I've understood it.
Okay. So, anything else that you would like to know?
I'm okay. I'm okay for now.
Okay. So, I think all the units have been covered, and you would soon be writing assignments, and after that, you would be writing your term and examination as well. Yes, James, you have joined just now. Would you like to share something, your idea about budget, or something that you would like to ask about this program or this course? Since I coordinate this course, therefore you can ask me if you have any problem pertaining to this course, school governance and financial management. James? No?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah,
No question. There's no question. Yeah.
okay, no question. Okay, in that case, we have less than 8 minutes, and there's no, and RC Dehradun, No, I'm not able to connect with them. So I leave it to you. Would you like me to discuss two or three slides pertaining to auditing or financial rules, or you can do it on your own, or maybe the academic counselors have already covered these topics? I'm not sure. Have they covered the rest of the topics? Audit.
No, I have not been in one of the counseling session where audit has been discussed.
Okay. So in that case, we do not have much time left, and nevertheless, each and every topic is not supposed to be taught. Rather, you are supposed to be reading on your own, and after that, if you have any problems, you are supposed to be sharing the problems that you face. Nevertheless, yes, auditing. So you know that auditing is essential in all organizations where financial processes are carried out, and the same is true for schools. And there is a saying that where the work of the accountants ends, your institution must be having an accounting unit. From there, the work of the auditors would begin. Therefore, as a school head, what you need to do is that you need to be vigilant. You need to be careful that your accounting section works efficiently and they are maintaining all the accounts they are supposed to be maintaining on a day to day basis, on a regular basis, in keeping with the established procedures of accounting. In case there is a laxity in accounting, the auditors would point it out. And I'm sure as school heads, you would not like that. So, what the auditors basically do is that they would check the accounts, they would verify, and they would report their findings. And apart from the financial transactions, other physical assets of the school that also might be checked. Now, initially, during the initial years, the auditors would narrate, and the business head would listen to them, what they have found in their. Then there was the practice of bookkeeping or rudimentary form of accounting. That what are the problems? What is the financial health of their organization? Is it promising or is it in a sick condition? What are the reasons? Is there overspending? And they would hear. But now it has evolved, and there are, you see that there is a systematic examination of all financial records and statements, and therefore the accounts. Financial records are examined. You need to keep the financial records in a safe and secure position, whether in digitized form or the hard copies, because these would definitely be verified during auditing. But then don't be scared, because auditing is not something which can be called inspection. There are many types of errors as well as fraudulent activities. When you read this unit, you will come across these errors, and some which are the outcomes of errors, some are the outcomes of fraudulent activities which even an innocent looking accountant might carry out. And an auditing process is beneficial. That's because you come to know about the situation, the actual situation of your school. Therefore, you should not be scared of auditors, but auditors will in fact benefit. But then whom should you engage? Those who are professionally qualified, those who have expertise. But if it is an internal audit, in order to ensure that your accountants are actually doing a good job, they are efficient and they are doing the job in a correct way, you also need an internal team which could comprise your senior teachers. There should be internal check whereby the tasks carried out by one employee or two employees or more are verified by others. There's also physical examination of maybe hard copies. of documents, records, invoices, every document pertaining to tenders, pertaining to all monetary transactions. And they may also question people, and they may also recalculate, recompute. Therefore, there are many techniques. For instance, they may raise queries, they may ask questions, they may analyze the financial statements that your institution has recorded, and they will finally prepare an audit report. But an audit program is far more comprehensive. It is prepared in advance by those who will come to your institution in order to carry out the auditing. You don't have to prepare it. And nowadays, you know that ICT is also very helpful, and the auditors might ask for ICT facilities. So this is about auditing very briefly, but I have provided at least the awareness pertaining to auditing, and we have discussed in detail the budget and the financial principles and a few more units. So with that, we come to an end in this session.
भाई को छोड़ता तो मैंने कौन है पास करना कर रखा हूं मैंने
Pardon? I couldn't hear what they said. And I wish you all the best. In case you have any problem, you can send an email to me. So, with that, I wish you all the best once again and goodbye.
Thank you, ma'am. Leave on.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.